my mind. I was like, oh, that's so fascinating. And so
Yeah.
I go from like learning to like really trying to be a sponge and soak it in. And
Yeah.
you might have touched on a few of them, but the ones that I kind of pulled out, which, that some of the principles that you talked about are like simple perspective cues, vividness, convert to a process, and emotional measuring sticks. Which ones, I'd like to understand which one is which to walk out of here. So simple perspective cues, which one was that? Was that the quarter?
Now, simple perspective cues is even simpler than that, the quarter, because that's a fairly elaborate setup that I had to give for that. But simple perspective cues is just, if you looked up the area of Pakistan, the geographic area of Pakistan, it'd be 340,000 square miles.
Yep.
That doesn't help you much unless you're a geography person that's used to interpreting land areas of political units. But if you say that 340,000 square miles is the size of 2 Californias, that simple cue puts in perspective what you're learning. It puts it in terms that American at least can understand what's going on. The wildfires that struck Australia a few years back that burned so many square miles of territory, those were the size of 2 Portugals. Or if you're from the States, the size of Washington State, or the size of the New England states. Those are 3 different comparisons that could give you purchase on a particular notions, fact, statistic. And there's some very clever researchers at Bing and Microsoft that started giving people perspective cues when they would look up facts. And all of a sudden, recall rates and ability to recall and use data doubled with just one of those simple perspective cues. And 2 Californias is actually a pretty good perspective cue because it's a small number and it's a well-known object. But you could have done 5 Oklahomas, and you still get this doubling benefit of the cues. And so the first piece of advice is when you're translating numbers, do something. It doesn't have to be the perfect thing. It doesn't have to be the perfect comparison, but whatever comparison you give people to put things in perspective and context, that's going to help, because otherwise numbers don't click onto our brains very well, and we're left with things floating around in the ether.
Yeah, I think that one, honestly, I would say, so I'm an avid reader of a weekly periodical, The Economist. And as much as I love it and geek out on it, journalists could absolutely use that tool. And every time they're driving numbers, just to have that beat into the understanding of like, every time I put a number, how do I put something simple that people can make it sticky for folks, right?
Yeah.
To create impact. That's incredibly helpful. The second one was vividness. And again, you may have hit on them. I'm just trying to understand each concept. So what is the vividness principle?
Vividness, in common usage, it means something that's very striking, or color or shiny bling kind of stuff. But what it means for us is just make it tangible and concrete and immediate for people.